I'm Jasmine Moradi, and you're listening to the Queens of Tech podcast, a podcast series about raising the voice of workplace champions. 60 plus questions in around 30 minutes with women, non-binary, and transgender influencers about their journey into STEM: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I started the Queens of Tech podcast initiative in May 2022 because I would like to retain more women, non-binary, and transgenders in the tech industry. Talent is out there, but our work environment needs to improve for all to feel safer, stay authentic, and to be valued for our contributions. My vision is to raise the workplace ecosystem for all in the tech industry by killing the imposter syndrome, stopping bad behavior, and increasing equity opportunities. Each podcast talk is built around 60 plus questions regarding upbringing, education, career path, DEIB, and future advice. My mission is to bridge the gap between schools and workplaces by getting to the heart of my guests' personal life and career journey to inspire other girls, women, non-binary, and transgenders to unleash their full potential to reach top leadership roles in the tech industry. My goal is to raise the voice of tech champions around the world and together with companies, investors, and politicians raise the challenges and opportunities around equity, inclusive diversity, and belonging in our workplaces. Enough is enough. I would like to enforce companies to build a sustainable, inclusive culture, to retain diverse talent, so we keep the workplace power equity to continue building future diverse and inclusive products. Your voice matters. In this episode, I'm very excited to welcome my guest, tech queen Katherine Manuel, COO of House of Blueberry. Hi, Katherine.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm very happy to have you joining us from US today. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm happy it's Friday. It's been a long week, so I'm ready for a little rest and relaxation this weekend.
That's amazing. Me too. And we're in Stockholm and we're going to have finally some sunshine. But before then, we are getting to get to know you. So let us dive into your journey into STEM. Hope you're ready for the Queens of Tech 60 plus questions. Let's warm up with a few fun facts about you. How would you describe your personality in 3 hashtags?
Caring, hardworking, and commercial.
How would you describe your life in 3 sentences?
I'm definitely fortunate for the family I grew up in. I am an extremely hardworking person that made the most of that. And I really want to be intentional about the way that I live the rest of my life to make sure that I use it for high value.
What kind of music stimulates and motivates you the most?
I love country music love songs. And if I have to really work and focus, I like piano music with no words.
What is your personal motto?
I don't really have a personal motto, but I do have a quote that sits at my desk by E.B. White. And it says, "I get up every morning determined to both change the world and have one hell of a good time. Sometimes this makes planning my day difficult." And I definitely look at that hard when I start my day.
What is your favorite book?
Pillars of the Earth.
What is your favorite podcast?
We Can Do Hard Things.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
Say something interesting about you that most people don't know.
I used to compete in rodeos as a kid.
What is your hidden talent?
Walking on my hands.
If you were going to write a book about your life, what would the title be?
I've written a book that I would probably also be the title of my life, but it's called Parents of Invention: How to Raise the Next Generation of Innovative Women.
Amazing. Now, let us dig deeper. Our childhood has an effect on our adulthood. Our early experiences shape our belief about ourselves, others, and the world. Now, I want to discover your childhood. Where did you grow up?
I grew up 15 miles west of Boston, Massachusetts, in the US.
What was your dream job as a child?
Either a stockbroker or a superintendent of a prison.
What was your favorite subject in school?
Math and history.
What was your least favorite subject?
Biology.
What is your earliest memory of technology and the arrival of the internet?
First memory of technology would have been playing ColecoVision, which was an early gaming platform. And internet was in 1993. I went to a company called GTE, which was a huge company back then. And I actually built a website. And I was very confused by the internet because we created a violin that people could come and strum and play music on. And we would go to GTE twice a week to build these websites. And somebody actually played and left us notes and messages about our website. And I thought it was so strange that somebody actually would find it and then be as interested to actually leave us comments and messages on the website.
Which were the 3 first technology gadgets you owned?
Calculator, a watch, and the ColecoVision.
Who was your female role model growing up and why?
My father's mother, she died very young of breast cancer, but I always heard incredible stories about her being a very hard worker and also putting her 3 brothers through college by working in New York City.
How do you think where you grew up and the school you went to and the generation you come from influence your education and career choice?
I grew up in this suburb of Boston, and it was relatively diverse from a socioeconomic way, but I was always told that I could do anything that I wanted. And there was very little limits, it felt like, put on girls. And the people that I got to know through school and sports were always very encouraging of me being both a good student and a good athlete. And so I never felt some of the cultural barriers to accomplishing what I wanted to as a young child. I definitely have since felt them, but not where I grew up.
Now, I'm going to read 2 quotes. First one, how does the universe expect me to choose a career path at 16? I can't even choose what I want for dinner. Second, Abraham Lincoln said, I quote, the best way to predict your future is to create it. So Katherine, I want to know the choices behind your career path. Where and what did you study at university?
I studied history and economics at university, and I had a fork in the road where I could have done something kind of off the beaten path, graduated from college and answered to more of my free spirit side, or I got a job offer from Anderson Consulting, which is now Accenture, to move to New York City and do technology consulting. And I picked that path, and I think that that is really what launched me into having many of the opportunities that I've had.
And what professional roles have you had before that led you to the current one?
I was a consultant in New York City doing large scale technology implementations. I went and got my MBA, my business degree at Duke. Following that, I joined Thomson Reuters, which is a public global company, and I moved up the ladder there. So I had, I think, 11 different titles in 13 years. The few that were probably the most significant, I was the vice president of technology strategy and enterprise architecture for the healthcare and science business. I was also a vice president of corporate strategy, building out a 5-year growth plan for the company. And then the last 4 years, I was a senior vice president and running innovation for the corporation.
What does House of Blueberry do?
We are a fashion house, and you can find us anywhere where digital fashion matters.
What is your title and what is your main responsibilities?
I am the Chief Operating Officer, and I would say that my main responsibilities are making sure that the company and the business delivers on its potential.
How did you get the role?
I decided in the pandemic that gaming was a really, really interesting space. And I watched my children who couldn't have play dates, who really couldn't see friends in person, find connection playing games. And so we were quarantined and they would FaceTime their friends and play games together. And I realized what was going on and the amazing connection that my children's generation were having in games. I also was reading a lot in the news that there were a lot of bad actors in some of the big gaming studios, and that it was still a little bit of the, what we would call the Wild West, where some of the DEI initiatives and some areas like that just were not being very responsible. So I felt like we needed more moms in the boardroom, and where better could I put my background to use than in the gaming industry? So I told anybody and everybody that would listen that I wanted to get into gaming, and many people sort of wondered why and what I was thinking, but it's been kind of the perfect place for me to be. Once I put it in the universe, I started talking to anybody and everybody that I was introduced to, and I ended up getting introduced to the CEO and founder of Blueberry, and we decided that I'd be a good COO, working side by side with her to lead us through a round of investment and lead the company moving forward.
Impressive and amazing. What does a typical workday look like for you?
I'm an early riser, so I can't sleep very late. So I wake up very early. I go to bed early. So I see what anybody has left me in Slack or texting or messaging from the night before. And that's kind of my quiet time to get a lot of thinking done from a work perspective. I also must admit, I do crossword puzzles in the morning. So it's one of the games I personally like. And then I go into meetings. I'm meeting with customers. I'm meeting with partners. I'm meeting with the team. I do a lot of work with the team because we're all kind of figuring out a very new industry together. And so a lot of it is talking things through. How do we make decisions around this? So a lot of the time is just spent with my people. It's great.
I love the quote, choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. So Katherine, what do you love about your role?
I love that I'm still learning. As I mentioned, I really wanted to get into the game industry and I didn't know much about it when I got in. So I'm really learning a lot about that. The other thing I love is that there aren't really templates. There's not a clear direction on what we do and where we go. And I like the idea that a lot of that is in our hands. So I get to make a lot of decisions every day and some work and some don't, but it's really empowering, especially having grown up at sort of big companies, to now be in a smaller company where I have that freedom to make a lot of decisions and have that impact and influence. And lastly, my team. I am just an incredible group of people who I get to work with every day, and that's fun. I really enjoy getting to meet with them and talk with them about their lives and also problem solve.
What is the best experience you've had in your role so far? Any examples?
Probably raising a round of investment at the end of 22. It was a really tough market to be going out for any startup. And the fact that we had a number of term sheets and a lot of well-known investors that understood the marketplace, really wanting to put money behind us, that was really exciting. And that made me realize that we have something that could be huge.
And then what is the biggest challenge you've encountered and how did you tackle that?
There's been a culture at the company that is sort of, you have a solo founder, you have somebody that kind of ran this in her own world and could do things, shoot from the hip sort of, like kind of just do things in a very ad hoc way. And I think the challenge is maturing the business in such a way that there are not too many processes, not too many frameworks, but some of that so that we can really scale and drive growth in a more systematic way than ad hoc.
What do you wish everybody understood about your role?
Well, yeah, there's a real business here. I think when I tell friends or even people I used to work with what I'm doing, they kind of laugh. Like I've had a midlife crisis and I'm going off in this very weird direction around digital fashion. And I mentioned earlier that I'm a commercial person. I think that there's a huge market opportunity for us.
What is the one common myth about your professional field that you want to disapprove?
That there are very mature, capable people that are in the field, in the business, that understand the potential that we have. And also some of the greatest artists and designers I've ever come in contact with are actually in a space that has never really had a huge light shine on them. And it's amazing just to see the artistry that exists in digital spaces.
What do you love about working in the tech industry?
The thing that I probably love the most is that if you understand and know technology, you can amplify anything that you're passionate about. And I think that there's a misconception oftentimes with technology that it's really sort of bits and bytes and boring. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about that I think we need to open up the arms of technology is that who can be excited about makeup, unicorns, trampolines, playgrounds. You can be excited about anything. And there's some way of taking technology and helping you amplify what your passion is and even creating a business or a community around it.
Oprah Winfrey said, I quote, think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail. Failure is another stepping stone to greatness. So Katherine, what have by far been your biggest achievement in your career?
Gosh, sometimes I fear failure too much and it's held me back. But the biggest accomplishments in my career, really that I've learned a lot about myself in my career, that working hard and doing the job and making sure that I speak up. I think my career has always been a mirror to show me who I am, what I do well, what I don't do well and could work on. The things that have really come back and shown me that I'm capable are probably both my maternity leaves. I got promotions while I was on maternity leave. And it showed me that people missed me when I was gone because I did so much work and I was capable at what I did.
So, what is the biggest factor that's helped you become successful? Any success habits?
Probably two things. One is that I work hard, but not just that I work hard. The other is that I make sure that people know who I am and that it was my work done. I did an internship really early in my career, I think when I was still in college, and it was in the summer. And the person I worked for, he said, always put your name on what you do. And that sort of goes an analogy for many things. But if your work, you should be in a boardroom presenting it. If it's your work, make sure that your name is on it. Make sure that you own what you do and you're proud of what you do.
How do you then measure your own performance at work?
Somewhat it's through the happiness and success of my team. I mean, I think as I've grown, so much of my success is actually more tied into, are my people successful? Are they able to do their jobs and lead their functions in ways that help the business go forward? But I also really care about my people and their just health in general, their mental health, as well as their work production.
And with success comes failure. So, what is your biggest failure in your career and what did you learn from it?
Probably that I never got this book published that I mentioned earlier. I think that that's always kind of looming there. It's like that itch I can't scratch. I went from being successful in my career to deciding to take a year and write a book, and trying to get through the publishing cycle was so humbling that I think that's probably what I feel the most failure around.
And then, what is inspiring and motivate you the most in your role and career right now?
I think my kids. I have two daughters who are almost 11 and 15. And I think that because I took this turn to kind of go to a startup, do something in a very new and emerging field, that they see that, you can always reinvent. You can always take what you have and go do something totally different with it if you build the tools and the skills that you want to take that forward.
Let us now jump into the influence of mentors, role models, champions, and sponsors. Role models can consciously or subconsciously be a powerful force in our lives. In addition, champions can stand up and advocate for us and open up the world of possibilities. Sponsors match emerging talent with leaders and influential employees who can help us move ahead in our careers. So, Katherine, do you have a mentor, champion, or sponsor today?
Well, yes and no. So my mentor, champion, and sponsor, kind of all wrapped into one, was a woman named Carla Jones, and she passed away a few years ago. Fortunately, I had a chance to work with her for years and years and develop a really strong friendship as well as working relationship. And so in many times that I feel like I'm challenged right now or struggling right now, I always think, what would Carla be telling me to do right now? And fortunately, I had so many years with her that I tend to think I kind of know, and I keep in touch with her husband and her sons who they know that sometimes I'll say, I think Carla would say this, you know what I mean? So that's probably somebody that's had a huge impact in that way.
And who's the female role model you look up to in your field?
A woman named Layla Shabir. She runs a company called Girls Make Games. She grew up in the UAE and was raised in a very traditional Pakistani family. She knew at a young age that she wanted to be well educated and get into technology. So her father said, let's figure this out. And she ended up going to MIT. And now she started this whole company called Girls Make Games that's part of the game studio. And I'm just really inspired by what she's done. She's been a real leader in her field, as well as making sure that she gives back and helps others come behind her.
History shows that it has been more common for men having mentors, champions, and sponsors in business than women. So, Katherine, how important do you think it is to have a mentor, champion, or sponsor during one's career?
I think it's wildly important. When I think about my career and who has had an impact on me, one, it's been many of the women that I've worked with. So I think that we need to demystify this idea that women don't support one another and women only feel competitive, because I would never be able to do what I do today or have done what I've done if it hadn't been for the other women I've worked with. And I also have gotten some incredible feedback from men who I've worked for who have taken a risk and pulled me aside and told me what I need to do and really work on, not necessarily from a deliverable perspective on like quantitative things, but more like, hey, we want you to be successful. These are things that you need to figure out how to do. They seem really small, but I actually look at those men who gave me some feedback, and it took a lot of courage for them to pull me aside and invest that in me.
Let's move on to leadership. Adena Friedman, President and CEO of Nasdaq, said, I quote, Empowering those around you to be heard and valued makes a difference between a leader who simply instructs and one who inspires. And Shirley Sandberg, ex-CEO of Facebook, said, I quote, "Leadership is about making others better as a result of your presence and making sure the impact lasts in your absence." So, Katherine, what does leadership mean to you?
Leadership to me means not always being the most popular, but being the role model so that people aspire to gain your respect in many ways. So I remember a track coach that I ran for when I was young. He always said to me, "You might not be the most popular, but you're the one that the younger girls will look to." And I think that that's the sign of a leader, somebody who does the hard work, that makes the decisions that are right for the business and for the team. And sometimes those decisions are hard, but they're respected for it.
What do you consider a good versus a bad leader?
A good leader is somebody that has a greater goal than just themselves. And I think a bad leader is somebody that always puts themselves first and doesn't think about the ecosystem that they're influencing.
And who is your favorite female tech leader and why?
Probably Layla.
And how would you describe yourself as a leader?
I think that I am direct. I think that I am intelligent in that I back up decisions with what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it so that it helps people understand. I think I'm tolerant. I understand that people have things outside of work that really matter to them. I think I'm also sometimes a little scattered. I think I have so much going on in my world that sometimes forget stuff when I'm a little flighty at moments.
And as a leader, what values are the most important to you?
Trust, transparency, and doing what you say you're going to do.
And what leadership lessons have you learned that have formed you into the leader you are today?
So much. I've learned a lot actually from playing sports, I think, both team sports and understanding how to make sure everybody plays their role and plays it together, but also a lot from coaching and being coached, but understanding sort of how to inspire people depending on who they are and what makes them tick.
What are your 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses?
My strengths are probably my hard work, compassion, and commercial focus. Probably my weaknesses are self-doubt, having so many priorities on my plate.
Let us now jump into the hottest topic in business today, workplace culture, unlocking the power of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Katherine, what do diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging mean to you personally?
I think it's part of the reason I am where I am and I get to do what I do. I think that having a mindset that my perspective is different than other people's who are at the table has allowed me or granted me at least some access into boardrooms and meeting rooms that I probably wouldn't be if years ago before winning the trail ahead of me.
What do you consider being 3 to 5 signs of good company culture if you were to join a company?
Transparency and sort of honesty, like real clear goals and really having people do those goals. I think a leadership that has integrity in terms of saying what they do and doing what they say. Probably that sense that diverse thoughts are respected. Diversity of, the diversity in however we think about it, but it's a very open culture and it's not only tolerated, but it's valued.
As a woman, what has been the most significant barrier in your career and how have you overcome these challenges?
I've definitely had a few sort of strange situations. There was one job I had that he was actually the founder of a company, and he told me I couldn't go to a meeting with big investors because being a woman, I would throw off the dynamic in the boardroom. So this is where it kind of goes back to feeling very fortunate, but I had the ability and a bit of savings, and I quit soon, like the next day. I just said, I can't work for a company that has that, and a person who has that mentality. Not everybody has that ability to just leave when something like that happens. And there have been a handful of things like that that have definitely that I've faced.
What do you think is important for more women, non-binary, and transgenders to join the tech industry today?
I think this idea that technology, it's not just a means to an end, but by learning technology, learning how computers run and systems run, it opens up a freedom and a capability to take their passions and amplify them, and also unlocks being an entrepreneur. I think that when you hit a lot of barriers in big companies or groups or challenges, you can run your own thing and you can start your own thing if you know technology and can put that skill set behind something so that you're not beholden to other people explaining who you are, or trying to put you in a box based on your gender or ethnicity or anything like that.
Do you and how do you speak with your colleagues about DEIB challenges, for example, salary gaps and promotions?
Right now, I mean, we have such a small team, and a lot of the team has been around for less than a year. So we haven't really come into that yet. I'm also at a company that is 90% female. So it's very different than where I have come from. In my past, though, it was sort of a big deal because we began to see where women were dropping out of the workforce or not getting promoted into the director and vice president roles. There would be programs and thoughts around how to coach the women so that they could step into these roles. And that always ticked me off. And I was pretty outspoken about the idea that it's actually not training the women, it's training the hiring managers. So we had a lot of conversations around that from a culture perspective and who to train and who to put the onus on in situations like that.
There are many public and internal discussion about the barriers women, non-binary, and transgenders face from reaching higher position in the tech industry. How do you feel it has affected you and is affecting you, and what is advice on how to unblock these roadblocks?
I think being open and talking about it with people, I think that right now we're in a place where there's an undercurrent of feeling like women or transgender people are getting into higher positions only because they are women or of a certain ethnic background or racial background, and it's not because of their abilities. One thing that I've thought a lot about is this idea of degree of difficulty. If you think about how hard it is to get to a certain level as either a woman or in the United States as a Black person, or sort of like where some of these barriers are, I think that there's a huge degree of difficulty that people have had to fight through to get to a level that they're even being discussed for a promotion. And I really feel like this degree of difficulty needs to be acknowledged and seen so that if there's a Black woman who is up for promotion, maybe it's not that she's the Black woman and that's why she's getting promoted, but to get to the level where she's being considered, she's had to fight barriers for her entire life. She's had to climb and fight for positions. She's had to break her way into rooms that weren't typically historically open to her. Like all of that, I think needs to be part of the conversation around why people should be considered for higher levels.
Today, tech companies spend a lot of marketing money to attract women, non-binary, and transgenders. However, at the same time, they're finding it hard to retain them. Articles show that women are leaving the tech industry. What is your best advice on strategies for how companies can work to build a stronger corporate culture that engages gender diversity and equity?
Treat them well when they get there. If you have a culture that's not welcoming, if you recruiting, you have nothing in terms of how to retain and build a culture that makes them feel valued, they will leave, and they should leave.
What would you say are the few challenges of implementing the IB culture in a workplace today?
Probably this idea that people will begin to say the only reason that she or they got this job is because of their gender identity, not because of the work that they do.
Why and how do you think companies would benefit from having not just women, non-binary, and transgender leaders, but actually higher gender representation at C-level and boardrooms?
It's diversity of thought. I think people have different backgrounds and they bring in different questions. They bring in different perspectives. They understand the customer better. I mean, if you really think about who are the customers, especially for a B2C company and B2B, actually, like who is buying your product and who are you selling to? Likely it's going to be a diverse audience because you want to have as big total addressable market as possible. And so you should have that representation in the decision-making rooms.
How much do you think the tech industry has changed regarding this subject since you joined?
I think it's where it's changed is that the conversation is in the open now. It's discussed. It's seen as an issue. I think that there's a lot happening now at the university level to try to encourage women and binary and transgender people to be computer science majors, to take intro to technology classes, all of that. There's been a lot of push around it. So I do think that there's been sort of a reveal and conversation around it.
And looking back on your career, what one thing would you have changed in your working environment to break the bias?
I probably would have stayed programming and coding a little bit longer. I did it for a period of time. And then I was like, okay, now I want to go, do the next thing and understand sort of the business strategy side. I think I could have gotten more out of programming another couple of languages and really kind of gotten my hands dirty in the code for it longer.
And then looking forward, what will you do as a leader to improve the bias for the next generation of women, non-binary, and transgender in tech?
The nice thing is that, as I was mentioning, our business is probably about 90% women. So I really hope that the people that work at Blueberry go off to start and lead companies that are in that spirit of the hiring the best talent, no matter what it looks like.
Let us move on to another hot topic in business today, which is work-life balance and mental health. Katherine, you have without a doubt a busy lifestyle. How do you take care of yourself to maintain good mental health?
I walk my dog a lot. So I really enjoy time where I walk and get a chance to think, to process. Sometimes I'll leave on a walk saying, this is a problem I want to solve on this walk, and hope that sort of answers come. So that's definitely one race. Another one is I actually work with a coach. So I can talk about everything from work to life and all of that. And just having that sounding board has always been incredibly helpful.
Have you ever experienced burnout?
I may have moments, definitely after having very young children at different times. It was incredibly tiring and exhausting. And even as they get older, it's mentally very tiring and exhausting. So I'm tired a lot, but I don't know actually burnout. I don't know if I've ever felt like I'm just throwing in the towel. I just realized that this too shall pass, right? Like that everything is a phase, and knowing that there are times that are really hard and leaning on other people. I think actually working with a coach, she was always very good at saying, what can you delegate? What can you give to other people? What are things that are really weighing you down? And are the opportunities for somebody else to shine and show what they can do? So I think that that's always helped me quite a bit.
What is your advice on how companies can create a more mentally healthy workplace in the new now?
A level of respect with people that if you expect hard work, you expect people to get things done. But one of the things that we have a pretty loose vacation policy. So if you need to go visit a sick parent, or you need to go take your dog to the vet, or you just need a couple days off, we are pretty loose and lenient on that, with the expectation on the other side that you get your work done.
What motivates you every day to get out of bed?
I mean, I'd like to say like my family and all of that, but it's probably just I'm setting a ton of energy. And so I could never sit still. So when I get up in the morning, I find myself in bed and ready to go. And I think it's just, I can't control my energy.
Now, let us wrap up with a few words of wisdom and a piece of advice for our listeners. Katherine, what is the best piece of advice you've been given that has helped you during setbacks in your role and career?
Probably this high school track coach I had, he always said that the only limiting factor I had was my own self-doubt. So when I do come to real hurdles, I'll think through, am I being too tough on myself? And are there ways that I can be more positive and give myself the credit to help me get through those moments?
And then, what is the worst advice you've ever been given, and how did you tackle that?
I had some advice around both not going to business school and also taking a pretty linear path when I decided to have my first child. And I thought that that was pretty bad advice for me. Different people have different choices, but for me, continuing to push my career, continuing to find enlightenment, learning, enjoyment in what I do has actually made me a better parent. So I think that was pretty bad advice for me.
Is there something you wish you would have known, or a skill you wish you had when starting out in the tech industry?
Probably more technology. I loved technology as a little kid, but then I kind of got away from it, and I wish I hadn't gone away from it because I was so passionate about it as a little kid. And then I kind of had to catch up when I was getting my first job.
If you had the ability to go back in time to when you were just at the beginning of your career, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Learn data science.
What advice would you give to young girls, women, non-binary, and transgenders who want to and trying to break into STEM fields today, especially wanted to become the next generation leaders?
There are always ways to learn and grow in that space. And if you hit a barrier and you feel like you can't get the education, you can't understand how to do something, there are so many resources out there right now, free resources. Just with the internet, you can teach yourself so many things. So I think being just curious and not taking no for an answer.
Last but not least, you have an amazing role and working at an amazing company. What is next for you in your role and career? What are your career aspirations?
At some point, I'd like to use what I've learned and been learning to be on public company boards. Not yet, but I mean, I feel like I still am gathering some tools and learning right now. But with technology, strategy, innovation, gaming, I think that there's a real opportunity to have a voice in that capacity later in my career when I wind down sort of the day-to-day 60 to 80-hour week job.
Thank you, Katherine, so much for being a guest on the Queens of Tech podcast, sharing your journey will without a doubt inspire change and reshape company culture for the next generation of women, non-binary, and transgender leaders in tech.
Thank you for having me. This has been fantastic.
Thank you for listening. If you have worked in the tech industry a minimum 3 years and would like to share your journey, please nominate yourself or somebody you know to I@jasminemoradi.com. For more podcast episodes and to learn more about the Queens of Tech initiative and to support us, visit queensof.tech.